"You're pairing a house cat with a war beast," Commander Ulrich muttered, barely glancing at the report blinking across his tactical wristband. "Let's not waste time pretending this ends in anything but teeth." Lieutenant Vetrasan didn't answer immediately. Her gaze was fixed on the glass-walled observation corridor that overlooked Containment Bay 12. Below, a reinforced cell pulsed with containment fields calibrated for apex entities. Behind them sat a crouched silhouette, thick-muscled, clawed, exhaling steam in timed intervals. Unit Vetra 11. It didn't pace, it didn't snarl. It waited, watching. Sand finally replied flatly. "The Coalition approved this integration under Directive 88. You want to argue with desperation? Feel free, but log it with command first." Ulrich snorted, flicking through the recruit's biometric file. Draven Core. Human. No prior combat rating. Orbital salvage license. Trauma-stabilized heartbeat, it says here. What does that even mean? "It means he didn't black out while suffocating under 5 tons of debris," San replied. "His neurolatency is sub-missile meter. His cortisol stabilizers trigger autonomic discipline under death-adjacent stimuli. It's not bravery, it's chemical compensation. So he doesn't panic. He doesn't react how you'd expect. That's the entire premise." The doors behind them hissed open. Core entered, silent, his boots tracking a precise rhythm against the durasteel walkway. No fidgeting, no shifting weight, just a calculated scan of the observation bay's angles and the people within it. His uniform was still too crisp, shoulders squared like a man carrying orders he hadn't been given yet. Sand made a mental note. His eyes didn't wander toward the datapads, nor the conversation. They locked on the predator. "Recruit Core," she said, turning. "You've read your deployment file?" "Yes, ma'am." "Repeat your mission parameters. I am to engage in 3-stage proximity trials with Unit Vixar 11. Observation to determine reactive capacity, control mirroring, and latent bond recognition. Oh, objective? To survive. Preferably with data worth logging." Ulrich grunted. "He's got a mouth on him." Core didn't respond. His attention had returned to the beast below, still unmoving. The transfer corridor into the lower containment level was pressurized in stages, each lock cycling with rising thermal density to simulate native planetary pressures for the more extreme species housed here. The internal lights adjusted to a red-hued low spectrum, the only band Vexar's secondary eyes didn't react to with aggression. Saiyan watched Core descend from the observation deck without hesitation. Inside the chamber, walls etched with blast scarring bore testimony to past transactions, some of whom didn't leave. Overhead, the tactical heads-up displays tracked chemical responses in both parties. San leaned closer as she watched the readings stabilize. Core stood at the marked threshold, 5 meters from the beast. The containment shutters retracted with a latching clack. Vexar lifted his head. 6 ocular units adjusted independently, each one fixing on Core's outline. His musculature shifted, just slightly. The tension coiled beneath his scale-armored frame. No growl, no tail movement, no shift in balance, just a tension. Okva Core didn't move. His heart rate held steady at 63 BPM. San exhaled through her nose, very softly. "No startle reflex," she muttered. "He's matching its fixate stance." Ulrich leaned in. "He's mimicking predator behavior? Not intentionally, it's passive nerve mirroring, survival through physical equilibrium. It's like he's anchoring himself in the moment." Core's next move was subtle. He shifted his left foot half a step. No weight transfer. The beast mirrored it. Not instantly, deliberately. Vexar rose. 3.2 meters of lethal biology uncoiled in total silence. The chamber didn't shudder, but every observer flinched anyway. Except Core. Still steady, still not breaking eye contact. San noted the vapor rising from Vexar's thoracic vents, syncing with Core's measured breaths. "I'm logging that," she said, her voice low. "Yep. The exhalation pattern. The predator is synchronizing respiration. That's early-stage pack alignment behavior. We've only seen it in pre-alpha pairs. Don't tell me this thing thinks he's a leader. I'm not telling you anything, San said. I'm recording the data. 2 hours later, the bay lights dimmed to signal session end. Kor hadn't spoken a word. He simply turned on his heel and left when the internal alarm pulsed once. Vexar did not follow. But neither did he retreat to the den enclosure. He remained upright, facing the door, like a sentry denied purpose. San remained still as she reviewed the footage again, frame by frame. Every movement had symmetry. Every shift had intent. There were no explosive reactions, no aggressive displays, only pattern alignment. "What's your read?" Voss asked. The bioethicist's voice cut through the stillness without preamble. He had entered sometime during playback. His tablet glowed with dense, scent map overlays and hormone feedback tables. San rubbed her forehead once. "We don't have a term for what that was. But it's not obedience, it's mutual assessment without dominance testing. Unprecedented? Utterly. I've run every bonding profile on record. This was a static field resonance without auditory or kinesthetic command prompts." Voss tilted his head. "So, the predator respects the recruit?" "No," San said. "The predator recognizes the recruit. That's worse." That night, San reviewed the footage alone in her quarters. She watched Kor's face when the shutters dropped. Most candidates blinked, flinched. One urinated himself 2 weeks ago. "Kor?" He exhaled. That was it. She paused the video on Vexar's rising posture, enlarged the feed. There, barely noticeable, his feet had moved. Not in aggression, not in retreat, but alignment. He'd adjusted to Kor's angle. "Why isn't it moving?" Ulrich's voice sliced through the comm line, sharper than intended. "Because Kor hasn't," San replied, eyes locked on the heads-up display. Data, threads, spooled across the overlay. Thermal readings, hormonal exchange rates, gait analysis, all streaming live from Containment Bay 7. She didn't blink. Neither did the predator. The exercise was simple in theory, proximity drills. Movement-based pathfinding where the recruit navigated a terrain field laced with visual and acoustic disruptions. Vexar was to shadow him with minimal intervention. Coalition standards called it Phase 1, familiarization. Vexar had matched Kor's stride within 2 circuits. The motion recorders logged synchronization down to heel delay, 0.14 seconds, not bad for a species considered biologically non-pairing, or cleared the angled pylon with fluid motion. No stutter in his footwork, no break in focus. Vexar's towering form followed, limbs adapting to the angular terrain without hesitation. His claws curled and released as he adjusted balance, an automatic correction, not a conscious one. "They're not coordinating," Ulrich growled. "They're mimicking. That thing's echoing his every move." "Not echoing, aligning," San corrected. "Look at the thoracic pulse rate. Vexar's baseline has dropped below defensive activation, or he's planning a faster kill. If that were true, Kor wouldn't be rounding the last marker with an unbroken heartbeat." The lights overhead dimmed. A coded shift in hue signaled environmental stage transition. Bay 7's obstacle grid now adjusted for field disorientation. Sam's fingers tapped a manual override, shifting infrared filters into play. Every movement inside the chamber turned to skeletal outlines and thermal vectors. Then the breach alarm sounded. Sharp, singular, no echo. Kor stopped mid-step. Vexar froze. San's eyes narrowed. That wasn't on the drill schedule. The wall behind Kor detonated inward. No warning, no prep phase, no announcement from control. 3 drone units surged through the breach. Coalition standard testing bots, modified with stun barbs and kinetic restraints. Simulated enemies. But Kor hadn't been told this stage existed. The first drone opened fire. Kor dove sideways, narrowly clearing a restraining coil. His landing cracked elbow first into the edge of a containment pipe, but he rolled up fast, drawing the inactive sidearm clip to his belt. Sand reached for her comm. Cease simulation. That breach wasn't cleared through. The second drone didn't get to fire. A fraction scream erupted through the chamber. Grating, multitonal, not electronic. Not human. Vexar moved. Not toward Core. In front of him. His frame collided with the attacking drone like a dropped industrial press. The drone's frame folded inward, internal gyros sputtering before collapsing entirely. Tired. Core blinked, momentarily stunned. His grip on the pistol tightened, but not to raise it, to steady his breathing. The third drone flanked wide. It didn't reach position. Vexar's rear-clawed leg swept outward, catching the drone across its motor stabilizer. The machine flipped twice before crashing into the west barrier, sparks raining from its drive housing. Sand watched the feed. His eyes had never left Core. Not once. "Tell me you're seeing this," she said without turning. Colonel Red Voss stood behind her, silent, arms crossed over a lightly creased lab coat. His tablet displayed the same visuals, but he wasn't reading it. He was watching Core's face. "I see an apex predator illuminating non-lethal test units," he replied. "That's called instinct. That's not instinct. Look at the dispersal unit." Sand pointed to the center of the chamber. Mounted along the breach wall was a scent stranger device used to simulate blood loss panic and prey analogs. It was untouched. "She didn't go into trigger mode," Voss noted. "Then what do you call that?" "Protection." Sand answered, flat. He didn't posture, he shielded. Core had stood, eyes flicking rapidly between the disabled drones and the towering form beside him. He didn't speak. He didn't move. His heartbeat had elevated only slightly, still within manageable thresholds. Vexar stepped forward and placed a single clawed limb ahead of Core, turning sideways, presenting his full frame like a wall. The containment team outside the bay flinched. Sand didn't. "Stand down," she said into the comm. Vexar tilted his head. Slowly, almost imperceptibly. Core nodded once, that was all. The predator returned to center. The chamber lights pulsed, Tess concluded. Sand turned to Voss. "Your analysis?" Voss didn't reply right away. His eyes were narrowed, not in dismissal, but recalibration. "If that wasn't a dominance display," he said slowly, "then it was a bond reflex." "I'm submitting a high-priority behavior anomaly log," San muttered, tagging it Phase 0 variance. "You'll get pushback." They can tag the video. The scent dispersal tube tells the story. Force exhaled once. No combat reflex, no submission test, no blood scent. And still, he responded. Exactly. As the observation window deactivated, Core exited the bay. His left arm was scraped raw where he'd impacted the pipe earlier. He didn't acknowledge the wound. Vexar remained inside, his massive form still turned toward the exit. Not pacing, not shifting, just watching where Core had gone. Sand tapped the tablet, freezing the frame. The alignment was unmistakable. "That isn't coincidence," she said aloud. Voss nodded reluctantly. "No, that's coordination born from something we don't understand yet." Behind the sealed door, the predator's 6 eyes remained fixed on a space now empty. And he didn't sit down for the rest of the cycle. He's not hesitating, he's calibrating. Sand's voice cut through the command layer as she leaned over the real-time heads-up telemetry feed. Biometric overlays flickered across her screen. Core's adrenal patterns, pupillary dilation, breathing intervals, each tracking just above threshold, yet never spiking. Directly behind him, Vexar loomed, his biorhythms now mirroring Core's with unnerving fidelity. Elevation in tension isn't enough to qualify it as synchronization, Uvrik countered from across the ops deck. He tapped through the raw feedback. "They're under stress, that's all." Sam didn't look up. The Predator's autonomic system doesn't sync unless it perceives kin alignment. This isn't environmental mimicry, it's behavioral convergence. Inside Bay 10, a new simulation terrain unfolded. Tier platforms, rotating barriers, and narrow corridors designed to push instinctual responses under shared stimuli. The goal wasn't speed, it was coordination. Every test so far had failed, especially with predator-class entities. Most responded to confusion with violence. Core adjusted his grip on the inert weapon issued for simulation. Vexar moved in lockstep beside him, not following, matching. Their angle of entry into the grid was identical, even down to shoulder tilt. "They're ghosting each other," Voss murmured behind her. "Not reactive. Intentional." "They're not aware of the cameras," Sun said. "This is unforced." Inside the training bay, Core ducked beneath the swiveling polearm trap, rolled across the incline, and came up low against a wall panel. He signaled an entry breach and pushed forward. The predator didn't lag. Vexar cleared the trap cleanly, not by default, but by exact trajectory. Claws sheathed, speed controlled. Behind the control station, Ulrich exhaled sharply. "How long do we let this run?" "Until it breaks," San said. "Or until something else does." The simulation adapted. Lashed cables snapped across the field. Electrical arcs chasing pressure points. Core shifted his route without hesitation, anticipating the grid's curve. Vexar veered just as swiftly, shifting weight, shoulder grazing the edge of a corridor that once fractured composite shielding on impact. Core didn't speak. Vexar didn't roar. There were no calls. Just motion, just silence, just action. The system's primary data node blinked green. Maximum cohesion rating. No other unit had reached that score under dual stress conditions. San's fingers paused over the manual override. The feed was too clean, too unforced. She watched Core again. His face was blank. Not emotionless, intent-driven. Then the anomaly surfaced. He glanced at the predator, not as a threat, not as a variable, but as a partner. "You seeing this?" Voss leaned closer. "Hold." Court made a subtle hand motion. 2 fingers rotated at the wrist. Vexar altered position accordingly, cutting off the dummy path. "It gave a non-verbal command," San muttered, "and it was followed. There was no vocal prompt, no implanted suggestion, no conditioning artifact. And yet it responded." Ulrich's hands clenched around the edge of the console. "I want this shut down." "That's not your call," San snapped, standing. "This data's entering live indexing. High Command has access. Terminating now invalidates your objectivity." Ulrich didn't flinch. "This isn't about objectivity. This is about control. That creature's adjusting to human inputs, not protocols." "Then we adapt the protocols," she shot back. "Isn't that what the Directive 88 clause demands? Evolution under operational pressure?" Voss remained quiet. He was already exporting the feed, hands moving across the controls without emotion. Sam tapped her comm link. "Reset field. Archive full run. Prepare behavioral replay for council review." Core and Vexar stood at the exit gate now, simulation over. Neither looked winded. Neither looked surprised. In the debriefing chamber, the lighting was dimmed to filter neurological fatigue. San entered with a tablet under her arm, notepad clasped beneath. Core sat alone at the far end, his uniform still dusted with residue from the synthetic terrain. No visible injuries. Just a fresh abrasion near the jawline, likely from the rotary barrier. She didn't bother to sit. "You realize this wasn't a standard drill?" Core didn't answer. "I'm not here to reprimand," she said. "I'm here because I need to understand what you did differently." He tilted his head slightly, enough to acknowledge the question. "I didn't treat him like a problem. You called it him," she noted. Core didn't blink. "He's not a device, he adapts. That means he thinks." "No one's questioning Hitz's capacity," she replied carefully. "I am questioning yours," Core said evenly. You paired me with something you thought would fail. I'm still standing, and he's not trying to tear my spine out. San let the silence linger. The weight in the room wasn't tension, it was realization. You're not just being observed, she said. You're being logged as a tactical anomaly. He met her eyes. Then log this too. He's not following. He's choosing. She closed the notepad. And for the first time since the experiment had begun, she didn't feel like the analyst anymore. She felt like the student. You're asking me to endorse a biological threat because it didn't kill someone. Yet, Ulrich said, stabbing a finger at the static image on the command table. That's not protocol. That's gambling. San leaned forward, elbows braced against the hard-in panel beneath the heads-up display. He didn't hesitate. He interposed. He neutralized 3 drones without entering aggression mode. Those weren't reflexes. That was protection. You call it protection. I call it manipulation. Ulbricht's tone flattened. Predators don't bond. They adapt for the kill. Then explain the scent markers. Sam tapped her tablet, summoning the biosample overlays. No hormonal flare, no predatory signal, no internal aggression cycling. This was not a dominance pattern. He aligned. Red Vos stood a half step back from the console. His silence didn't mean disengagement. He scanned the correlation feeds between Core's cortisol emissions and Vexar's scent output. Every timestamp marked a sync event, microseconds apart, building over time like a training protocol never taught. San dropped her datapad with a deliberate thud. I'm submitting a formal theory. Pack dominance reactivation through stabilized threat cues. We're not talking about imprinting, we're talking about instinct recognition. Legacy behavior suppressed by survival evolution, now reawakened through equilibrium-based signaling. You're turning it into philosophy, Ulrich snapped. No. I'm documenting neural cross-reaction data in real time, and for once we're ahead of the reaction curve. San's voice didn't rise. It hardened. This isn't about instinct. This is about structure. It's not a freak occurrence. It's a pattern. And if you shut this down, you won't just bury a mistake. You'll kill something the enemy hasn't adapted to yet. Voss shifted his weight. She's not wrong. Ulrich turned. Excuse me? I reviewed the last session independently, Voss said. I cross-referenced it with archived pre-Visolation pack recordings from the early Visarthi culture modules. Identical postures, identical scent cadence. Core's the only subject to trigger that response without triggering hostility. So now we're elevating reflexive mimicry to command structure? I'm saying he isn't mimicking anything, Voss replied. He's being mirrored. The vote was held off record. 8 officers, 1 civilian consultant, no broadcast, no laser plasma records, just a closed-loop decision node locked to officer credentials. 5 voted to terminate the integration program. 2 abstained. San was not one of them. She wasn't invited to cast a vote. She was waiting in the operations wing when the message came through. A single line burned across her tablet. Project code line suspended. Effective immediately. Stand down experimental assets. Her jaw clenched. She didn't respond. She went directly to her console, opened the redacted feed logs, and began sanitizing the summary overlays. She knew exactly who to send them to. The Interspecies Ethics Board didn't take military orders. It operated on documented precedent and transparency breaches. San packaged the data, scrubbed identifiers, and transmitted the incident logs under a protected review clause. She didn't tell anyone. She didn't need to. 4 hours later, the coalition's legal counsel halted all shutdown orders pending inquiry. It didn't undo the vote. It delayed enforcement. Ulrich called it sabotage. Vuls called it initiative. San didn't respond. She had already filed the redeployment forms for Sector Gamma 6, a neutral logistics corridor near a decommissioned refueling array. Low risk, no hostiles, few patrols, but officially, it was still live duty. Core and Vexar would be deployed there under routine non-combat recon exercises. It wasn't progression, but it wasn't death either. "Why are we being reassigned?" Kor asked, the corner of his eye catching the drone transport loading gear behind the bay doors. His tone held no resentment, only calculation. "Because this project isn't over," Sam said. "But not everyone sees that yet. Was this your decision?" "No, but the outcome was." Kor adjusted the side holster on his uniform, checking its maglock alignment. Vexor stood behind him, silent, tail low, body loose. "Are we expected to stay inactive?" "You're expected to stay visible." Kor considered that. "So this is a test without a label. It's an opportunity without a leash." He didn't reply immediately. Then, watching Vexar out of the corner of his eye, he said, "He's responding to stress markers in the command team, not fear." Frustration. He didn't trust the silence in that last debrief. San raised a brow. "And you?" "I don't need trust," Kor said. "Just intention." On the loading bay floor, the transport hummed through final diagnostic. Vexar stepped forward and lowered his massive head toward Kor. It was slow, deliberate, not bowed, not surrendered, aligned. Sam watched from the upper deck. The still image seared itself into her thoughts. Kor didn't flinch. He placed a flat hand against the crest of Vexar's skull. That wasn't obedience. That was synchronization. "They're not cleared for frontline engagement." Ulrich barked into the comm console, his tone sharpened by urgency, not uncertainty. "We don't throw experimental bonds into uncontrolled zones." "These zones already uncontrolled," San shot back, her tone clipped as she navigated the command terminal's override codes. "Command's tactical grid went dark 4 minutes ago. We've got 17 confirmed unit failures and void drones inside the blast perimeter." The operations center swarmed with movement. Boots clattered against anti-static flooring, fingers tapped out deployment patterns, and overhead alert sirens bled into background chaos. The Void Scourge hadn't attacked a logistics corridor in over 6 cycles. They weren't expected here. That's what made it dangerous. Voss stood behind San, arms folded, eyes fixed on the incident display. "What's the latency?" "Under 90 seconds. Entry was surgical," she said. "Targeting maintenance ports and relay silos, not infrastructure. Personnel. They're sweeping for survivors? They're eliminating the command chain." Ulrich's image flared on the heads-up relay, his frame jittering with packet delay. "You authorize that team, and it's your license. The clause doesn't cover active void incursions. I'm invoking Scientific Directive 4A. The protocol allows for tactical field override when emergent anomalies present strategic response potential. Kor is not a field commander. He doesn't need to be. He just needs to walk in with Vexar and let nature handle the hierarchy." Before Ulrich could finish his sentence, San keyed the final command. The deployment seal unlocked. The transport skid barely settled before Kor stepped off the ramp, boots striking against fractured platform tiles. The air was thick with charged particulate, the residue of low-yield plasma detonations still hanging near ground level. The refueling array's substructure lay in partial collapse. Armored panels had folded inward like cheap insulation. Vexar followed silently, claws raking sparks as they crossed the scattered debris. His posture wasn't aggressive. It was poised. Kor didn't look back. His comm clicked twice. No words. Just bandwidth confirmation from the support team monitoring their approach. From behind the loading struts, one surviving technician crawled into view, his suit torn across the chest plate. He pointed toward the far corridor, breath ragged. "Or drones. In the comm spine." Tore through the relay core. "No comms. No uplink." Kor gave a short nod. "Stay behind the cargo mound. Vexar covers the north entry." The Predator moved without instruction. They advanced through the first hallway, concrete fractured underfoot, the floor slick with thermal discharge fluid. Overhead, sparks dripped from severed junction tubes, none of them lighting the area effectively. Kor swapped to infrared and kept low. Ahead, movement. 3 drones broke formation, expecting standard infantry response. Vexar didn't wait for orders. He slashed sideways into the right flank, drawing attention instantly. The impact sent one drone crashing into the corridor wall. Kaur capitalized on the shift, flanking left. He fired his concussive rounds into the central drone's sensory node, blinding it. The remaining unit pivoted to fire. But Vexar had already doubled back, pinning it to the ground with his lower limbs and ripping through the base housing with a twist that cracked alloy like cheap framing glass. Silence settled again. Kaur pressed forward. The final drone had retreated, trying to reach the comm node's remains. It didn't get far. Vexar vaulted the bulkhead, landing with a seismic thud that made the plates buckle. He pinned the machine mid-action, then waited. Kaur approached, weapon raised. He didn't fire. "Move off," he said quietly. Vexar complied, stepping back as Kaur fired a final round into the drone's joint actuator. The machine stilled. Back at command, the post-battle analysis ran frame by frame. San stood in front of the playback array while senior analysts reviewed every maneuver. 4 verbal prompts, one officer said, disbelief coloring his voice. 3 directional, 1 combat halt. That's it. Full synchronization score logged, the tech beside him added. No hesitations, no latency, misfires, engagement duration 73 seconds, 0 collateral damage, 1 wounded survivor extracted. Ulrich didn't speak. He stared at the final frame. Vexar shielding the technician with one arm, while Kaur overrode the station seal to let evac bots in. "Tit Omar Petten," Voss started, pointing. They all saw it. Vexar's dermal plating had shifted. Not just reactive coloration. It had matched Kaur's flank position. Blackened on the left, light show gradient on the right, creating a synchronized visibility curve against corridor lighting. He'd adapted for concealment. In tandem. "That's not just camouflage," Voss said. "That's rhythm-based modulation. He's mirroring his partner's spatial footprint." San nodded once. "Submit the footage, attach the bioadapted metrics," she said. "We're past the threshold. Now we make them watch." Ulrich's jaw tensed, but he didn't argue. Because he couldn't. "That thing should be under lock," Ulrich snapped, eyes flicking toward the chamber entrance as Vexar stepped through without escort. "He came willingly," San replied, not glancing away from the tribunal bench. No tether, no handler, no resistance. The only thing standing between him and violence is trust. The Coalition High Council chamber wasn't built for show. Its design centered around deterrence. Rows of tiered seats, audio-responsive walls tuned to catch even subtle infractions, and a command node ringed with plasma-inscribed authorization circles. The table before San pulsed with active data, sent packet simulations streaming beside hormonal projection overlays. Every member present could see the full spectrum, whether they wanted to or not. Kaur stood to her right, arms at ease, gaze level. He hadn't spoken since entering. Vexar stood just behind him, not pacing, not flaring threat limbs, not shifting his weight in the predatory rhythm most species use to intimidate. Still, watching. "Let the record reflect that Unit Vex AR-11 has entered this room of his own volition and has not been sedated," declared the attending oversight officer from the central dais. One of the Helier delegates, a gas-form speaker using multi-frequency modulation, voiced its concern through a translator array. "Presence of uncontained apex entity constitutes procedural violation." Sam didn't move. "Only if he's unbound. He isn't. He's partnered." Ulrich scoffed. "Call it what you want. We're here because the experiment has become a liability. Your pair is now mimicking field officers and violating authority hierarchies." "Incorrect," San said. "They're outmaneuvering protocols that failed to evolve. There's a difference." She keyed the presentation node. The chamber dimmed slightly as a multi-layered neural model projected above the council table. Spliced imagery of Kaur's adrenaline markers alongside Vexar's olfactory chemical responses. The chart highlighted the overlap, then time-synced it with video of the Kaldesh Verge engagement. "Note the intervals," San said, pointing to the rolling waveforms. "These aren't reactionary, they're anticipatory. Core's neurochemical threat assessments stabilized before spikes, triggering precognitive scent responses in Vexar. She paused the footage. That isn't a leash, that's leadership. A silence hung. Ulrich broke it. You're assigning authority based on hormonal drift and movement pacing? I'm documenting cognitive equivalence, she replied. What you call drift is command transmission in species-specific format. You're just too used to shouted orders and salutes to recognize instinctual calibration. Voss, seated 2 rows behind the main council, raised a single hand. The forensic review from Kaldesh lists only 4 vocal commands during a 9-minute engagement. Response rates outpaced coalition-strained strike units by 37%. One of the older counselors leaned forward. And yet it could be coincidence. A shared rhythm, perhaps. Proximity alignment. We've seen it before in trained units. Core stepped forward. No one trained us, he said, voice calm. You all saw the footage. He didn't follow orders. He acted because he knew I would. That's not conditioning. That's collaboration. Ulrich folded his arms. Or it's entrapment. No predator operates without motive. Perhaps we've simply allowed the creature to mask intent long enough to bypass scrutiny. A low vibration resonated across the chamber floor. Vexar had moved. Not aggressively. He stepped beside Kur, gaze sweeping the council, shoulders drawn high. Sand's heart slowed fractionally. She didn't stop him. Vexar's limbs curled inward slightly and then, wordlessly, he extended one arm forward and positioned it across Kur's front, shielding without contact. The chamber froze. Let the record show, San said, breaking the stillness. The Apex-class subject initiated protective stance without external threat, verbal cue, or sensory agitation. He is not responding to aggression. He is declaring allegiance. Several council members exchanged glances, others taking notes without looking up. Symbolic gesture or not, Ulrich began, it doesn't rewrite doctrine. San looked him directly in the eye. No, but it rewrites the context. After a pause, the senior counselor activated the vote cycle. Motion. Authorization of field pilot program. Up to 50 human-predator integration pairs across 6 sectors. Provisional. Subject to weekly review. Commence vote. One by one, the ring around the dais lit in sequence. Blue. Gray. Blue. Red. Green. Final tally. Passed. San exhaled. Controlled. She didn't smile. She didn't need to. The counselor looked up. Effective immediately. Lieutenant Sen, draft deployment schema. Recruits will be screened. Units selected based on compatibility markers only. You will report results directly to this chamber. Core looked to Vexar. The predator stepped back, not out of deference, but to realign. This time, no one asked him to. Military and no one dared stop him. Contact loss on all Delta posts. Command nets gone. The tech's voice didn't waver, but the edges of his fingers twitched as the feed flickered out. On the heads-up wall, the perimeter grid went dark in staggered intervals. One breach after another, cascading across the Kaldesh Verge schematic. Lieutenant Vetresan watched the pattern unfold. There was no encirclement, no siege logic. The Void Scourge wasn't overwhelming sectors. They were threading through them. Fast. Silent. Surgical. Quantum phase tunneling. Voice muttered behind her. They're not breaking through. They're bypassing structure entirely. San leaned over the command table, overlaying unit locations against known tunneling vectors. Every elite team in place had already gone silent. Top units. Hardened veterans. Gone without distress beacons. They're not targeting resistance, she said. They're pulling the supports out from under it. The general in charge had already rerouted supply channels. But it was too late for static defense. The verge had been cracked open. Only flexible units could operate now. She keyed in the override channel. Deploy Group Echo and Subsec Cinder. Immediate field response authorization. Human Vaskaran teams only. Draven Core didn't wait for permission. His team's boots hit soil outside subline node 12 without a formal drop cycle. Vexar moved beside him, low and angled. His spined ridges refracted ambient haze, adjusting color blend every 10 meters. Not camouflage, sensory disruption, just enough to fool proximity scanners. Behind them, 2 more pairs emerged, Reich Tavil and Unit Yaxer 3, followed by Ale Darvin with Predator 8 cracks. No chatter. They didn't need it. Core signaled a hand flick forward. Vexar picked up the movement and adjusted formation. The first tunnel collapsed in less than 6 minutes. The Scourge didn't make noise. Their forms pulsed between matter states, soft light bleeding around their contours, destabilizing as they moved. Core fired only when Vexar exposed a vulnerability, momentary anchoring before the shift. The first kill was clean. The Void figure tried to bypass the team by slipping through a wall seam. Vexar was waiting behind it. The Predator struck without effort. Jaws opened vertically and latched into the unstable tissue just before the phase flickered. He twisted. The entity collapsed inward. Core didn't speak. He just moved to the next junction. A heat spike triggered across the team's visual net. Darvin keyed his mic. Tunnel cores folding in. They're deploying anchors to disrupt fallback lines. We push parallel, Cole replied. No direct path. Davil nodded, swiping a drone marker across the wall. Redirecting east. We'll sever conduit channels on breach vector. Core turned to Vexar. Mark Tunnel 3, clear top ridge. The Predator launched upward, embedding claws into a sidewall. He scaled without sound, tail coiled for balance. At the peak, his head turned once, signaling all clear. Core followed the signal and redirected course. They didn't check with command. There was none left to check. In the next subline, the Void had begun constructing a static vortex loop. Energy anchors anchored themselves in overlapping frequencies, folding parts of the corridor into spirals of distorted space. Core narrowed his eyes, tracking the shimmer. Split. Disrupt with directionless movement. Draw phase error, he said. Darvin and Crack circled clockwise. Core moved counter. The Void unit responded. Its body flickered as it tried to anticipate where a straight-line human would go. Cohor stepped aside. That was all. Vexar surged from the adjacent corridor. His lower forelimbs slammed the phase stabilizers into the wall, disrupting the loop. Koa fired 3 rounds into the entity's core. The energy didn't absorb. It scattered. The Scourge fell inward. By the 5th collapse, the Scourge began adapting. Their formations lengthened. They stopped clustering. Began targeting the Predators first. Noticed immediately. Pattern shift. I'll draw first lock. Confirmed, Tavil responded. They moved as one, 4 humans shifting across terrain marked by static anomalies, while 4 Predators kept to the outer bends, coiling in and out like a current. The Predators didn't just attack. They listened. They waited for single-word triggers. Drop. Split. And they executed. The last tunnel ran deep into Verge Core. Coalition intel had marked it as a tertiary access shaft. Turns out it was a primary gate. When Core's team reached the ridge above it, 20 Void nodes were spiraling below, forming a superstructure anchor. Core scanned the field. Ventral point. Tavil checked his feed. Node 0 is recessed, defensive lattice active. Core looked to Vexar. Cross angle. Sync with cracks. Vexar clicked once, low and controlled. Cracks responded from across the gap. Then they moved. The Predators surged toward opposite flanks, one from above, the other underground. The Void structure registered their mass, redirected Core pulses, exactly as Core predicted. That's when the humans attacked. Core fired through the anchor seam, not aiming for the entity but for the thermal hinge beneath it. Tavil dropped a magnetic disruption charge on his flank. Darvin triggered collapse from the lower access valve. The Void gate trembled, then imploded. No explosion, no fire, just vacuum force crumpling the core from within. Vexar landed beside Core as the field collapsed. He didn't roar. He didn't posture. He tapped Core's shoulder once, claws drawn in. Sync complete. Verge perimeter shows no further movement. Void vectors have fully withdrawn. The announcement came from the Field Ops console, not the War Council. There was no applause, just acknowledgement. The tactical command screen held a single static message. Void activity ceased, backed by the last time-stamped engagement log. San reviewed the feed without speaking. 3 void tunnels were marked as collapsed, not by orbital strikes but by human-led squads. No reinforcements had arrived. No override codes were issued. Coalition command had broken down within the first 2 hours. The rest of the defense had come from autonomous human Viscaran units, operating without direct supervision. The Corps team had neutralized 5 tunnel entrances and coordinated strike formations with 3 other pairs. The data showed uninterrupted cohesion, with no friendly fire incidents, and no failures in command relay. Field results were now indisputable. The old doctrine had failed. Cohesion warfare had not. The following day, the Coalition Council met in emergency session. San submitted the compiled data package. Every council member had access to it through heads-up relay terminals. Her summary presentation was short and focused. It included video of autonomous unit movement, command latency comparisons, and synchronized kill ratios. Most importantly, it contained footage of Predator units, waiting for human directives, without aggression triggers. San's tone remained steady as she outlined the protocol changes. Integrated human Predator teams maintained battlefield integrity after every chain of commandment node collapsed. They didn't require outside support to succeed. What they required was mutual alignment under pressure. One council requested clarification on command signal transmission. She gave it. Hormonal markers, scent stability ranges, limb movement patterns tied to simplified vocal cues. Another asked whether this was an isolated event. She responded with a trend map, showing the pattern repeating across 12 sectors over the last 4 months. Ulvert did not object this time. He remained silent. The vote passed with full support. Effective immediately, cohesion warfare doctrine would be formalized. 50 human Vescaran pairs would be deployed to frontier zones for long-term evaluation. Training infrastructure would be updated. Evaluation would shift from obedience metrics to compatibility indexes. Later, San met Core outside the repurposed deployment hangar where new recruits were being registered. There be authorized full implementation, she told him. You've been offered strategic rank, field-level command, integrated ops authority, and a seat on the training doctrine board. Core didn't hesitate. I'm not accepting. San didn't argue. She had expected that. I want to stay with him, Core added. Command structure interferes with operational flexibility. If you assign me elsewhere, you'll lose what worked. You're requesting to remain in deployment rotation. Yes. With new unit oversight, but no staff rank. Assign me as training lead, no desk work. Proved, she said, without checking her slate. You're already listed as the prototype baseline. The training yard outside Eltro 7 had been rebuilt after the Kaldesh conflict. Its design included modular terrain zones, variable hazard simulators, and real-time sync score monitors. No observer booths, no VIP platforms. Just workstations and results. Core walked along the outer walkway with Vexar beside him. The Predator matched pace, occasionally glancing toward the drill units. 4 pairs were moving through the scenario grid. 1 pair was falling behind. The human wasn't giving directional prompts clearly. The Voskarn was adjusting without confirmation, but the rhythm was unstable. Core stopped, watched, and made a notation on his wrist pad. They're trying to rush behavioral trust, he said. They're copying movement patterns without actual understanding. Vexar responded calmly. They want the result without learning the process. Core nodded once. We built it by experience. They're being taught by simulation. From the far side of the yard, San approached with the day's intake report. You've got 15 new recruits arriving tomorrow. 5 are already flagged for secondary evaluation. Core scanned the report. Compatibility scoring? Above baseline but unstable under pressure triggers. They'll need field trials, not lab observation. Run them through scenario rotation 3, no adjustment, support. Confirmed. Core returned his attention to the training path. One of the trainees issued a poor call-out during a forced turn sequence. The Predator slowed, adjusted, and waited. No error, but no success either. They'll get it, Vexar said. If they do it right, Core replied. Koa turned, stepped off the walkway, and moved toward the open grid. Vexar followed. He said nothing more, but just before crossing the field boundary, he placed one hand on Core's shoulder. Not as a barrier, not as a signal, just steady contact, acknowledgement. Core didn't react. There was no need to. They moved back into the drill zone. Not as a ranked officer and controlled asset. Just as a team, operating under shared knowledge, built through repetition, risk, and decision-making under threat. For the first time in coalition combat history, a Predator did not need orders. He just needed the right partner. And that partner was human.